Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. In Matthew chapter 10, we have what is called the limited commission. This is when Jesus sends out his 12 disciples to go out into the land of Israel and to proclaim the gospel, to proclaim the message of the kingdom. And in his sending out of these apostles, we gain some principles about how Jesus calls us and how Jesus sends us out to do his work. Because the pattern that we see here is a similar pattern to what we experience in life. There's basically four things that Jesus does for his disciples in sending them out on this limited commission. The first thing he does is he summons them. In chapter 10 and verse 1, it says Jesus summoned his 12 disciples. And then verses 3 through 4 go on and describe or tell us the names of these disciples or apostles that were sent out. And in our lives, that's the starting point. Jesus summons us. He calls us, as it's commonly called. He calls us generally through the gospel message. We are called into a relationship with himself and with the Father and with the Spirit, and we become committed to everything that it means to be a Christian, to be a part of the kingdom, to be a citizen of the kingdom, to be a part of God's household. And so there's a general sense in which we're called, but then there are also specific callings that each of us have. That is, there are specific things in our lives that is individual to us that we are called to accomplish that perhaps someone else may not be so much called. And what I mean by that is that each of us has or have particular gifts. There's particular things that one person can do that another person does not do so well. Not everybody is able to get up and preach a message, for 30, 40, 45 minutes to a crowd of hundreds of people. But some people have difficulty just sitting down one-on-one with someone and having a Bible study with them, whereas other people are much more comfortable doing that. And so we can kind of tell by our gifts and by our talents what direction God wants us to go in our working for him. But also there are the impressions that God puts on our hearts. That is, that feeling within your heart where you just know this is something you need to do. You can't explain why you feel that way. You don't know. Well, you can explain why, but not naturally. You can't explain why you're having that feeling, except for the fact that God is putting a burden on you to do something. Maybe it's to speak to your neighbor. Maybe it's to take food over to someone who's sick. It could be a multitude of different things, but there are things that he summons us or calls us to do. And so that's the first step. Now, if it was just left to that, it would be a great burden, because we might sometimes be called to do things that we don't feel very equipped at or we don't feel very adequate for. But the second thing that Jesus does here for his apostles ought to give us comfort, because he does the same for us. And that is, he equipped them. Continuing in verse 1 of chapter 10, it says, after he summoned them, it says, and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. And so he said here that he was going to give them the power, the empowerment to accomplish the task. Further on in verse 19, in talking about the times when they would have to stand before rulers, even then they would be equipped with what to say. It says, but when they hand you over, do not worry about how or what you are to say, for it will be given you in that hour what you are to say, for it is not you who speak, but it is the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. So these apostles were going to be fully equipped to do the task that Jesus had called them to do. And that is a general principle. What God calls us to do, he equips us to do. Perhaps you've heard the phrase, God doesn't call the equipped, but He equips the called. And that's absolutely true. He's not going to call us to do something and not give us the strength to do it. It might be something that He gives us beforehand to equip us, to prepare us for it. Or it might be something that He gives moment by moment as we are being faithful to what we feel He has called us to do. But in either case, He will equip us. He will empower us to do what He calls us to do. Think about a boss on the job site. A boss is not going to tell his employees to do a particular task without giving them the necessary equipment to do it. And the same thing would be true with the Lord. The third thing that Jesus does here is He sends them out. In verse 5, He says these 12 Jesus sent out. And of course there's the sending out. So there's a calling to, there's a putting a burden on your heart to do a particular thing. He equips us to do it. But then there's a time when we have to actually go out and do it. We can't just sit around and say, yeah, this is what I feel the Lord has called me to do. Now let me watch some more TV. No, there has to be a point where we say, okay, it's time to go out. It's time to do it. Yes, there are seasons of preparation that God brings us through, but at some point we have to say it's time, and we have to go. And then the fourth thing is very important as well, and that is He instructed them. Also in verse 5, it says these 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them. And then the rest of this chapter is really instructions on what they were to do, how they were to respond, some warnings, some words of encouragement by Jesus. But it can all kind of be put under the heading of instruction. And of course, Jesus has given us His instructions through the Holy Scriptures. He instructs us on how we are to act, how we are to behave in a very general way. But we could also pray for Him that He would instruct us in the moment to know what to say and how to act. Because there might be specific things that we need to say to a particular person in a particular situation. And there might be specific things we need to do with or to another person in a particular case, in a particular situation. And so we need to be open to receive instruction from the Lord, pray for wisdom from the Lord, so that when He does call us, when He does equip us, and when it is time to get sent out, that we do it fully with the fullness of instruction and knowing exactly what it is that He wants us to do and how He wants us to do it. So these are some things to think about. Just spend some time today kind of doing some soul searching. Looking and say, is there something that something that has been tugging on your heart for some time that you've kind of ignored? Something that you felt for quite some time that you need to do, that you feel that God is calling you to do. Make a commitment today to either do it today or at least begin preparing to do it, praying to God that He would equip you to do it, and then that He would give you the knowledge when it's time to actually go out and do it, and then to receive instructions on how to do it. It starts today, and let's begin to do that. And if you're already in that process, just continue on, and be encouraged that the Lord is with you and that He will help you through the process. Well, thank you guys for listening in today. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.